My name is Soon Yu. I have the honor and privilege of being your host today. And my main responsibility is, number one, make sure we stay on track. Number two, make sure that our keynotes and our speakers are introduced and so you understand who they are and how they connect to our theme. And number three, as best we can together, make sure that one, that we stay engaged, and two, that we're learning, and three, as much as possible, that we're all having fun. So I'm going to need you guys' help on that, okay? All right. A little bit about me. When I'm not chairing events, which I've never done before, so I guess my day job is actually working for a company called VF. How many of you actually are familiar with VF? Okay, very few hands, notice that, okay. So VF is actually an apparel company, and we have about 30 brands under management. Some of these brands you probably recognize: North Face, Vans, Timberland, Nautica, Seven for Mankind, Splendid, Elamos, etc. So how many now recognize some of the brands that are part of VF? Much better, okay, great, okay, great. Okay, so today we are here to talk about this idea, which is inspiration needs execution. So it's not just about coming up with the next billion-dollar idea, which is very important. That's going to change consumers' lives for the better. That's going to build brand new industries. But it's the heavy lifting that's required to get it from the concept stage all the way into the marketplace. And as you guys know, being innovators, that part is probably the most difficult part. It's not coming up with the ideas, it's actually trying to get the organization aligned and the momentum going to get it into the marketplace. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So when I think about this as our theme, it begs this question for me. So why does inspiration often fail to execute? Okay, so you're probably wondering, why is this guy being asked to be the host? There is a reason why I was asked to be the host, okay? It's because in this question, the word failure is very prominent, right? I just want to let you know that I am an expert at failure. I'm sure some of you are too, but here, I'm going to give you my scorecard of failure, just so you know who I am, okay? So number one, I've had 4 career restarts. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, big deal, career restart. Recruiter called you up, and then so you decided to go to another industry. No, these all were preceded by at least 12 months of unemployment, knocking on doors, and basically having to recreate myself. So different type of career restart. I've had 5 businesses dissolved. Yes, my wall of shame there, okay? But this is the worst part. In these career restarts and businesses dissolved, this is probably the most painful part for me, and that was that I've actually had to sit in a room with people and tell them that, unfortunately, they're not going to have a job in the next week. Okay, that was really hard. Now, as an outcome of all this activity, I've had at least 20, it's probably more like 30 now. I've lost track. This is an old slide, but product failures, okay? So that's my wall of fame when it comes to failure. Now, I want somebody in the audience to guess, what's 300 represent? It's a big number, but actually it's really a small number. Anyone know? Okay. Yeah. By the way, couple things. That's the basement. You can't go below 300. It's like putting your name on the SAT, you get automatically a 600, you know that? So that's the same thing. I got my name on a credit score and nothing else actually added to it. So I got 300, and here's the catch. I've had it twice in my life, okay? All right, so does anybody want to rival me? We can talk after and break, okay? I'd love to know if somebody did that more than me, okay? All right, so I know a lot about failure, so I love asking this question then. Why do most innovations fail? Especially when you guys have put in the hard work to vet it. You've talked to consumers. You know there's high desirability. You figured out all the feasibility issues in terms of how to manufacture. You built a business plan that gives you a pilot and then a prototype and all the way out to a glide path to viability. Why do these fail? Okay, so let's examine a story on that. Here are 4 multi-billion-dollar industries. All right, you've got the internet, you've got the graphic user interface that turned into the operating systems, the mouse, and the personal computer. Does anybody here, I'm sure somebody knows this question, not the 300, but at least knows the answer to this question. Who created these in the 1970s? Yep, we got a hand here. Oh, of course you know, you worked there. Dave worked there. Xerox PARC, the Palo Alto Research Center, okay? They actually created all these ideas back in the 70s. But here's the catch. Why did they not commercialize them? Was it the technology? No, actually, back in the 70s, the technology was actually pretty good. I mean, when you went from having to use a cursor to going into a mouse, trust me, the testing off that was off the charts. No, it wasn't the technology. And the concepts, like I said, when they tested it with consumers, all these ideas had a lot of promise, and yet they weren't commercialized. Was it money? No. I mean, Xerox had tons of money. And in fact, the Park was probably one of the most well-funded research labs there was, maybe outside of AT&T. At the end of the day, it was this whole issue of dealing with people in the organization. So the innovation champions, basically what they ended up facing was these different walls. I call them walls, okay? So the first wall is they presented some of these ideas, and some of the business leaders that they presented it to basically said, this could eat into my existing business. How am I going to replace my existing business? This seems really groundbreaking, and it could be fundamentally damaging to my business model. So they hit a wall of fear. Others, and this happens a lot, they talk to business leaders and they go, oh, that's really novel. It seems really interesting. Yeah, it's many years out, but guess what? I've got to hit the quarter. And when I look at my portfolio of activities, this seems really low on the list of things I want to do. There are things that are closer in, don't take as many resources, and quite frankly, are much less risky. So they sort of hit this wall of apathy. And lastly, I know all of you sitting in the audience, since you're in this field of innovation, you've chosen to be in this field, have heard this word. Hey, here's a great idea. Prove it. How many have heard the word prove it before? Yes. Okay. So it's a wall of disbelief. So these are the three walls that a lot of innovators face when they are trying to champion great ideas. And you know what's really needed here is this idea that we all need to be innovation champions in order to get these ideas from sort of great testing and great results and great prototypes and great experiments all the way into the marketplace. And we collectively here are really responsible for that. So I want to talk a little bit about what does it take for us to be great innovation champions, okay? To get over those walls that we were just talking about. So I like to use this analogy. It takes what I consider a T leadership model. So let me explain the T. On the vertical, that's the subject matter expertise of being a great innovator. The integrative thinking, the creativity, the ability to integrate technology and consumer insights and design, all that is what I call being a great innovator. Coming up with that idea and giving people a sense that, what is it and what could it do, the benefits. The horizontal is also critically important. And this is about the ability to get other people who may not be so bought into the idea or not that close to the idea on board and aligned to the vision of what you want to do to improve consumers' lives and improve your company, okay? It's the influencing skills that are critical to both influence up and just as important, to influence across to other functions. Because at the end of the day, not only, if you think about it, the innovators here, we're usually at the very forefront of presenting an idea. And if we can do the influencing both at the beginning and throughout well, then that idea has the greatest chance of getting into the marketplace. So we have a lot of responsibility when it comes to this horizontal. The other thing that's pretty important about this, or I say it's very difficult, is it takes a lot of courage to be an innovator. Other functions, they get the ideas presented to them. And then, of course, they can give feedback and critique and judge those ideas. But us as innovators in the room, what's our responsibility? We actually have to stick our neck out there and present the idea for people to criticize. And then we're supposed to take all that input and figure out a way to make the idea even better. That takes a lot of courage to say, raise my hand, here's my idea, critique it, judge it, and I'm going to be okay with that. And I'm going to continue and push forward even through all that. All right. So let's talk about some of the skills required to be really good influencers as innovation champions. So I like to think about leadership in these 5 E's. I think you've probably all seen this before. Envision, enroll, energize, enable, and execute. Now when we think about the horizontal, it's really about the first 3. It's the ability to both envision, enroll, and energize. So let's sort of pull these apart a little bit. What do we mean by envision? So envision is envision a bold and unpredictable vision for the future. What are some characteristics of this? When we think about a powerful vision, it has a few characteristics. One, it's this idea, it's both a story and it's about the future, okay? Because you want to take people from today to somewhere sort of wonderful and great in a future state. This is important. It can't be predictable and it can't be bland, because quite frankly, you're not going to get people too excited about that, which is the next thing, is that you want people to be ignited. You want their passions and their imaginations on board with you for this vision. And ultimately, if you do all these things, it's going to compel people to join you. Because at the end of the day, a vision is only as good as the collective and the people that participate in it. And you want it as owned and as shared as much as possible. The last couple of years, I've had the privilege of working with BMW and their DesignWorks team. And they are masters at painting visions and going after them. So what I'd like to do is roll a video for you that demonstrates the power of a great vision that they had 5 years ago and the resulting outcome of that. So if we're ready, roll the video. So they went from an idea to an actual working prototype. And in talking to them, they are very close to coming up with designs influenced by this idea of a dynamic car that reacts both to the road, to the needs of the driver, to the weather conditions. If you've seen some of the insides, which I didn't show in you here, it's the idea that it adjusts to your body, and it actually perfectly caters to your sitting needs and your ergodynamics. So it's pretty cool. So that's a powerful vision, right? Because it actually led to an outcome, okay? So that's one of the first things we need to do as great champions and great influencers. So let's look at the next characteristic. This is a very important one. We need to, once we've painted the vision, we need to get other people to sort of buy into this vision and to own this vision. So we need to enroll key stakeholders, here's important, to share. And once they share, to promote that vision together. Now, when I first started to work at VF, which was about 6 years ago, in my first 2 years, I really took this idea of enroll to heart, and I said, boy, you know, I've got these great ideas, we've got a lot of them, I've got to go and sell really hard. I've got to spend a lot of time and energy, I've got to hit the pavement, I've got to twist some arms, bend some ears, and get these ideas into the marketplace. And here's what I found out. When I did this, it was by sheer brute force or just energy and will. And yeah, we had some early quick wins, but this is one of the things that kind of I found confusing, and it was this fact, that when myself or my team weren't attached to the project, when we were a catalyst and we had to leave, a lot of times the projects would either falter or the bigger idea somehow became a lot smaller, okay? And for the longest time, I was really frustrated. I could not figure out why. And it was at the end of my second year that I actually did a 360 feedback. And in my 360 feedback, I got some verbatims, and I'm going to share one of them with you that sort of captures kind of why I wasn't really doing the enrolling well. I still remember this. I think I'll remember this. Hopefully it won't be on my grave, okay, on my tombstone, okay? But like I said, failure, I'm really good at it, okay? So first 2 years, yeah, we got some things out into the marketplace. But what I didn't build was relationships, and I didn't build other champions for these ideas, okay? And it was really a hard lesson to learn. And you know, there's a lot of verbatims, but this is the one that always stuck with me, okay? And it made me really think, what does enrolling mean? And what does it mean to be successful when you enroll? And the lesson I learned that I still take with me today, and I still have to remind myself, and I still look at this, okay, this quote here, is that there's a big difference between selling and influencing. Let me explain. So here's about selling your ideas. Okay, so you've got a great idea, and you want to convince and persuade people to execute this idea, and here's the value proposition or the bill of goods that you actually want people to embrace. And it's very transactional because you want to sell something and you want them to buy it, okay? And at the end of the day, your end result is this idea, it was sold. Kind of like one of those real estate signs, you know, sold, right? Now the difference with influencing, by the way, when you do all this, it kind of reminds you of this, right? Now, here's the thing. I have more hair than this guy, but I don't think our 360s were that much different, okay? At least back then. Hopefully, I'm improving. But back then, that's the case. So influencing is a little bit different here. And it's a nuance. And it's a big nuance, actually. So instead of just convincing and persuading, you are actually spending a majority of your time listening and having empathy. There's a big implication for this. And that is, as you listen and as you're empathetic, you are willing to be convinced and persuaded that maybe your vision needs to be changed. And therefore, you're willing to change your vision, okay? So when you go into these conversations, it's not about trying to sell something. It's trying to listen to what the objections might be, where there might be room for improvement. That's what you're looking for when you're influencing. And instead of basing it on this idea of a value proposition or a bill of goods, stay at this level. We have a shared vision. We have a shared purpose. How does this meet it? And that gives you common ground as you have those conversations for yourself to be convinced too and be persuaded. It's not transactional. It is very much about co-creation. Sort of fits in the spirit of both design thinking. It's the idea of you are co-creating with those people that you want to be working with. And at the end of the day, it's less about results because results are sort of one and done. It's about relationships, okay? And I say this to my team all the time. When you go into a meeting, half of it is content, and the other half is the relationship. And in fact, I think as you work with more and more senior people, that ratio starts skewing a lot more to the relationship part. Doesn't mean that content isn't important. Doesn't mean your idea is not important. Doesn't mean the data you have isn't important. But it does mean that the relationships are important. And how you approach things, and you give people the ability to feel like they can co-own this. Because at the end of the day, this is what you want. You don't want the sold sign. You want a shared vision. Because if you guys are catalysts and you're not in the room, you have other people who are going to stand up and say, here's why it's important to achieve our vision. And and they can hear their voice, the input that they gave as they co-created when they see that overall vision. Okay? So that's what you're going for when you're influencing versus selling. All right. Now, fortunately for us, this week, we have a lot of great influential champions that we can learn from. And I've spoken to almost all of our speakers, and I have gotten a sense that they're very connected to this idea of not only giving you great inspiration, but the tools necessary to flourish in terms of trying to get these ideas into the marketplace. So they'll speak a lot about that today. Getting this amazing group of people together was no small feat. It was a big, big task. And fortunately, we had an all-star team that actually put this together, and I want to acknowledge them. And so if you're here, please stand. Kelly, you're here, and just want to acknowledge the people. Let's give them a round of applause, guys. A lot of hard work to bring these influential people together. Okay, so I have one more, which is the ability to energize. So once you got people once you've created this vision and you've got people to sort of coalesce around that and to actually share the vision with you, your next step is to create that energy that then cascades into momentum, and then that cascades into getting into the marketplace. So you need to energize the entire organization towards this vision. Let me illustrate what it takes. It takes really good storytelling. So I'm going to give you a compare and contrast. We all talk about having, was it consumer-centric or customer-centric innovation, right? How many of you have seen slides like this? Love our customers, and yes, here's the profile, and great, yeah, they're really good at golf and bowling, and they, in terms of their hierarchy of purchase, blah, 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 and segmentation, all that. You've seen that, right? Now, the challenge we had, so one of the brands that is part of VF is the North Face. And this was about 6 years ago. North Face was really looking at entering the China market in terms of really entering it full force. And the initial thinking was, well, should we take what was successful in Europe and in the US and basically, maybe turn it into Mandarin and then export it to China? Luckily, the team was much more thoughtful about that. And I think the biggest challenge was the goal would have been to take the folks, and North Face is based in California, take the folks in Alameda and basically send them on a trip to China to really fully get immersed with the consumers. But that was really hard to do. And charts like this just didn't bring it to life. They could say, okay, here's the difference between the Chinese consumer and the US consumer. But again, charts don't bring it to life. And it really required great storytelling to bring to life the idea of consumer-centric innovation and bring the Chinese consumer to the folks in California. So I'm going to share another video. I'm going to tee that one up. That's really about telling the story of our consumers.
喝醋是我的终点。我的极限在哪里？
如何得到真正的友谊？
大家都说我是强驴，但我不是这么看自己。
他们让我一起去，但我心存犹豫。我有力量，够敏捷，我很聪明，但自然对我来说，依旧是个谜。
隔些日子不去户外。 我的心就蠢蠢欲动。
我走遍天南海北，饱览无限风光。人才是最美的风景。
我永远不会忘记。 那些我到过的地方，更不会忘记那些陪伴过我的人。
你感觉到这个背包的力量，蛮好的，可以吧？好，这边。
我想挑战自己。
大自然 我嬉戏，任我欢笑。
我看，我感受，故我在。在大自然中分享我的已知，填补他们的未知。
从内心到身体，从身体到精神。
我要结识新朋友。
投身自然，让我生机无限。
走进自然，开辟我的新疆界。
拥抱自然，你我共同书写回忆。这就是我们的圈子。
So, a little bit about that story. We have two main segments that we address at the North Face, and consider one called the hardcore and the other the trendsetter. And the hardcore in the US and in Europe, they're really about sort of climbing the highest peak and improving upon their previous performance. In fact, bettering their best. That is really the idea of the hardcore, okay? And the trendsetter is somebody who really likes to be seen wearing the clothes and be seen as sort of setting the trend in terms of fashion or in terms of branding. Now, what was different about the Chinese consumer was a couple things. The hardcore there, that person was much more about bringing other people into an undeveloped category, sort of into this idea of uncharted territory. And if you know Chinese culture, it actually fits in very well. Chinese culture, the most respected professions are healers and educators. So the hardcore in China really saw themselves as sort of that, a healer and educator, bringing people into the sort of nascent category. And the trendsetter in China was very different. It was all about being social. It was all about the ability to connect. You saw sort of at the end of the video, they actually climb together, they meet friends that way, they build sort of bonds that way. And then afterwards, the climb continues because they go to people's homes and they look at all the photos and they re-experience the journey on a social level. Another big insight was there was a third segment that just doesn't exist in the US, and that's the uninitiated. There are people that have grown up in sort of these tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 cities in China that have never been out in the outdoors. They've grown up in this urban sprawl their entire lives. And so these important insights led to very different innovations in terms of how we brought the brand to life. So in the store, you would actually go and you would see something called the Club Connector, and it'd show you all the local climbing clubs, because that's what they had. They had climbing clubs, and who the key hardcore person you could contact was. And they also had trail finders and things that were all about building a brand new category. So that's the power of great storytelling in terms of driving great innovation and getting the entire organization mobilized against that. So we talked this idea of being a champion, which we all are, okay? Innovation champions, because we got to get these ideas from sort of the concept into the marketplace. And when I think about being a champion, especially for innovation, I think about this quote, and it says that all truth passes through 3 gates or stages, okay? The first one is this. First, it is ridiculed. Remember the famous prove it? So we've probably had situations where people thought, that's not a really good idea, I'm not going to fund that, or, okay, passive aggressive, sure, you can maybe work on that, but I won't take very many meetings on that. So this idea of being ridiculed, it takes a lot of courage to sit in the space of wanting to be an innovator. The second truth is this. Second, it's violently opposed. Oh, this is too expensive. Oh, guess what? This could cannibalize my business. All these things, okay, in terms of opposition, okay? This takes great stamina and great influencing skills. All the things we talked about. Third, it's finally accepted as self-evident. But here's the irony for all of us in this room. Once it gets to this stage, which is many years later often, okay, it is so self-evident that it's not considered innovation anymore, and people almost forget historically all the hard work and heavy lifting and all the ridicule and opposition that you faced getting it to the point where it was now self-evident, okay? So it's almost thankless in some ways, right? So why do this? I think we all know why. I think in many ways, I make the analogy, and I tell my wife this, sometimes I come home and I'm really frustrated because something just didn't land, right? But at the end of the day, she always reminds me, you watched that movie, Apollo 13, and you saw how they were, their goal was to get to the moon and bring people back, and that's why you're doing this. And I go, you're right. And that's why we're all doing it. If you think about it, we're at a new renaissance in terms of what the world can provide us, in terms of consumers' sort of expectations of things that they want from innovation and from new technology and their willingness to change, all the technology that's available to us, and all the new business models that are being explored. We are the pioneers of figuring out what is that going to mean in terms of improving consumers' lives. And what a great time to be an innovator. It is a hard time because, yeah, we're going to face these two things up there often. So what I would like to suggest is this. You have a room full of people that have similar challenges, similar goals and aspirations, okay? Network, reach out, support each other, share best practices. I've spoken to a lot of our speakers, and a lot of reasons they're speakers, and a lot of reasons they are writing books or they're teaching is because they want to share a lot of the lessons they learned so that it makes it easier for the next generation. And I think we have an opportunity to help each other. So one thing I wanted to share is technology-wise, you guys all saw on your name tags a little device, right? I'm kind of calling it the Tinder of conferences, okay? So apparently you put in your profile and it'll light up green. I see a green over there and a bunch of reds. It basically means that you're near somebody that has a similar profile, similar challenges, similar concerns. Don't be bashful. Reach out and connect with each other, okay? I highly encourage that.